Now, would the renewables work any better or worse in a global warming world as opposed to how the nuclear plants are expected to work in a global warming world?
Well, you know, nuclear plants are thermal plants in that they convert the nuclear energy to steam, and you run it through a steam turbine. And the steam turbine goes through the system called a condenser, where you need cooling water to condense the steam back into water, and then it's boiled again. The condenser water usually comes from rivers, lakes, or oceans. Here it comes from, quite a bit of it comes from Lake Michigan in this region's reactors.
And the rivers. Yes.
And the rivers. And along the coast, it sometimes comes from the oceans. When it comes from rivers, especially, in a global warming world, some of the rivers can run low, and then you have a problem with your cooling of your reactors. And you have to, not the reactors, of the condensers. And quite a lot of water is needed. You need a very vast volume of water to be going through these condensers. So when you don't have enough in the river, you have to derate your reactors. If it's 1,000 megawatt reactors, maybe you can only generate 800 and 700. This happened in France on a pretty large scale a couple of years ago when they had a big heat wave in the summer, and they had to reduce the generation, even shut, if I recall correctly, although I don't recall correctly, don't recall very well whether they had to shut down a reactor actually or not. I think they did.
So in what seems to be a global warming world, the nuclear plants aren't going to function very well, quite possibly.
Well, they may not. They may have. You know, you can invent designs of nuclear reactors that don't need cooling water. The current designs do. There are new designs. So the answer of the nuclear industry to that would be. So I don't believe that cooling water is an essential constraint to the growth of nuclear power, because just as with coal, you can invent, you have air cooling for coal-fired power plants. You can have nuclear reactor designs that don't rely on water. But it's true that the current systems that we have for nuclear reactors do need a very large-scale supply of cooling water for the condensers.
So you're sitting at the energy poker table.
Yeah.
And you're the advisor to the governor of a very large state who happens to be running for re-election. And you say, we're entering a new future. Where does he put his chips? What would you advise?
Well, as I mentioned, efficiency is the first thing. We've got a terribly inefficient energy system and very inefficient use of electricity in lots of sectors. We still haven't gotten to installing photoelectric switches everywhere, so we are still lighting up the daylight in lots and lots of places. We just waste electricity on a pretty large scale. There's no reason for lights to be on outdoors, but you see them everywhere throughout the country. You have motion detectors, you have compact fluorescents, you have a new kind of lighting system called light-emitting diode, LEDs. They're even more economical. So installing the very best energy technology, requiring real estate developers to install the very best energy technology, that I think should be the starting point. Now, the Midwest is very rich in renewable resources. I think to take the academic resources that you have here, you have Argonne National Lab, you have a great university system in Illinois. I know Urbana is one of the great centers of electrical engineering. I even knew about it in India when I was preparing to come to graduate school here in the 60s. So I think these resources have to be marshaled for a big state if they want to become a leader in a new world, rather than relying on nuclear energy, which should have been confined back in the 20th century. It's a bad way to boil water. To put nuclear fuel inside a tank.
I've heard them referred to as the most expensive tea kettles. They're what, $1.5 billion to $3 billion a piece, something like that?
Well, yeah, there's other pieces than the tea kettle, but the nuclear reactor is a very expensive piece of it. To put radioactive material inside a tank of water in order to boil it is not a very sensible way to boil water. It's very expensive, and it creates accident risks. That while the probability may be small, the consequences are very large, as Chernobyl showed. Now, our reactors won't have the same kinds of accident as Chernobyl because they're of a different design, but the scale of accident is certainly possible. The probability would be lower here, but once that accident happens, all that becomes academic. The damage could be in the hundreds of billions of dollars, as estimated by the government.
Well, we'll have to leave on that somber note because we're just about at the end of the show, but
Can
you've covered a lot of bases on it.
Can we say invest in wind?
You can say that.
Because it's
Certainly.
economical. It really is.
Okay.
It's not worth the proliferation and waste headaches to go with nuclear.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Dr. Arjun Makhijani for joining me here today. You've been watching CAN TV, Community Forum, a community service of CAN TV. Tune into Community Forum for local issues and concerns every Saturday from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. on CAN TV 21. I'm Dave Kraft, and thank you for being with us today.